So I'll be delivering the content. I'll be giving you the contents, what are the things available in the industry and how they are modified over a period of time, and what are the flexibility, and based on scenarios, we can implement them in the projects. So in this particular session, we are about to solve only a simple problem where we basically focus on RDMS, which is relational database, and Java. So basically, the most important and basic thing we would do is connecting to the programming language to a database, right? So the same thing. It's very simple. I'm going to save and retrieve a person object. And not only that, the person object will be very simple. So to reduce the complexities as well. So I'm just going to create a simple table which have an ID and a name varchar. So the ID will be the primary key. So I will show you the implementation. So over a period of time, we have so many frameworks were into the stand. I will show you one by one how they are implemented and how they are came into our life and make our life very easier as a developer. Let's get, before getting into the framework part, let's see what is at the base of this persistent puzzle. So we all know whenever we say connecting a Java to a database, often the one thing that comes to our mind is JDBC client. To achieve that, we need a driver, right? JDBC driver. So in this session, for this case, I'm using Postgres SQL DB. And here only 3 of us. One is me. Yeah, it's now okay. One is me and the JDK that I have installed in my system, and the Postgres driver that I added in my form.xml, like where the dependencies comes in the picture. Let me load the dependency and show you what are the things that we really have here before getting into what I'm trying to achieve. So you can see just Postgres, which is my JDBC driver. So from this clear cut of idea, we can see the things that we use really from Java SQL based. So where we need to manage the connection, the implementation, we need to manage the connection, and we need to create the prepare statement by ourselves by writing a query. And also if we want to generate like whatever the query we need to get, we need to handle it everything. We need to execute the query by ourselves. And not only that, we need to collect the result set and we need to do the whatever the logic that we need to perform. So you need to create a connection, you need to create a DAO layers, and we need to write a business logic with that. So not only that, if you want to save and retrieve data, so that is what the problem that we are talking about. So when it comes to JDBC client, you need to write 2 queries where insert and select in a basic way without written. Okay. So this particular method will execute you the select query. So insert query, whatever that we have here. Same find by ID will execute the select query, whichever we have it here. So here you can see one thing. The number of line code written here was huge, and there might be a probability that connections can be increased. So if you are not aware of like how the connections really connect to the database, you can miss something. You can connect multiple connections to a database, which might be it may be in a great trouble in later. So how can we reduce this piece of code and also reduce the like things and make the life of the developer easy in the development and not only the speeder way? So there comes another picture which I have researched recently, which is JDBC client. So with this we have it in latest Spring 6 framework. So before that it was not there. This is released in Spring 6. So before getting into the Spring 6 JDBC client, let me explain you flexibility of JDBC. So when you go with JDBC, you can use whatever Java gives. So it's irrespective of the dependencies, irrespective of the versions, you can use whatever you want, like records. So whatever the new features coming in, you can use whatever you want in the JDBC. And this is also independent for the framework and library. You can use it in any library, and even in Spring Boot and Quarkus. Not only that, in anything you can use the a JDBC client, because you are writing everything, right? Making connection, preparing statement, and executing it. Okay. Now let's leave the JDBC apart. JDBC apart. Now let's get into the JDBC client, where Spring 6, we have this in Spring 6. So for enabling this, obviously we need Spring Boot. We have framework. To do that, we need to add a Spring Boot parent. And not only that, we need to add some dependencies which need to support the JDBC client. So let me change this as JDBC. Yes. Okay. So this is for testing and this is for JDBC dependency. And we need Spring parent for this JDBC client to work. So not only that, we need to connect the database. So Spring Boot, how Spring Boot will connect to the database? We need to specify the property file, right? So let's straightly go to the resource folder. Oops, I don't have anything here. Let me add a file, application.yaml. Okay. So what I will do is I'll just add I'm adding a data source where my database is there. So currently I've been using this Docker Compose. It's already up. So it's already up and it is hosted in local host, and this is how the credential. So to see the query logs in our IntelliJ console, let me enable it. So it's already enabled. Let me clear the buffer. Yeah. So whatever the query that we executed in our local thing, that we can see through this. Okay. Yeah. Oops, I missed one thing. Before enabling this Spring Boot, let me show how it works. Let me comment this for now. Let me show you how it works. Then I'll get back to this same thing again. Okay. So to show how this JDBC work. So this single line that performs that solves our problem, where you can see I've added two JDBC logics where I create a connection, I prepare statement, everything, right? So this works. So it automatically gives the ID. So whatever the thing that I written, it works. So now it's clear that JDBC works. Now let's get back to the JDBC client with the POM again. Let me uncomment this and the parent as well. Yes. So when it comes to Spring Boot application, the one thing, very important thing that we need to follow is there should be a Spring Boot application, because the component that we have, most of the thing that we do in containers, right? So there should be a component scan where the beans should be stored in the container so that everything works well and good in Spring Boot. So to do that, we just create application, just an application for Spring Boot. Let me annotate it with the Spring Boot. Oops, let me sync the maven first. Okay, Spring Boot application annotation. Then let me write up static void main. Good. So this is a thing that this is the entry point for the Spring Boot application, as we all know. So not only this, when it comes to testing, we will annotate the same as Spring Boot test, where it gives us the flexibility to access over the beans that is created in the Spring Boot. So it's a normal Spring Boot case. Okay. So what about this creating a new object here? So do we need to create an object in a Spring Boot application? No, right? The bean will take care of it. So let's remove this. Let's move this out of this. Let's have an auto wire. Okay. Now, still, this piece of code can solve the problem because still it has a JDBC implementation in it. But now what we are trying to achieve is we are just going to remove the JDBC and we are going to replace it with JDBC client. So that is what we are going to achieve right now. To do that, Meanwhile, do anyone have any queries? Yeah, regarding the performance. So regarding the performance, I need to explore more on that. So I cannot tell comparatively right now without measuring its performance by my side. So with article, I can say which whenever we maintain by ourselves, everything by ourselves, it is flexible for us, for the developers perspective, it is flexible for us to maintain everything, like writing the code, writing the connection, how many connections there should be there, so that we can maintain. Regarding the performance, without measuring, I cannot let it out. Yeah, I will come in this point. Yeah. Okay, one second. Yeah, regarding your question, we will come to this point. Yeah. So before that, I show you the dependency tree of JDBC, right? We find only one Postgres driver that we had. So I currently had a JDBC to get the support of JDBC client, right? So still this code works because we have JDBC client, like JDBC inside our code. So to leverage the accessibility of the JDBC client, let me remove this, or let me comment this. So what I can do is, so for the JDBC client, the data source, the connection between the data source will be managed by the client. So let's migrate this data source to JDBC client. So this JDBC client is available in Spring 6. Once it is done, it's migrated. Yeah, it's migrated. So let me refactor the name so that for the better understanding. Yep. Yeah, let's comment out this code as well because this is also a JDBC code. Okay, fine. So here, what we can do is, so this is how we will use JDBC client. So this dot JDBC. So this didn't change the name. Okay. So we will pass the query, insert query, and the param because we have a param here. So we are passing a param, which is nothing but the name. So we are setting the name of the person. So the argument would be name. And what we are trying to do is we are just getting the ID. We are trying to get back the ID in this client. So we are going to update it with a key holder. So with the key holder, with the help of key holder, we can get the ID. So and I need to specify which column I need to take this data. So this particular key holder will get me the data of the column, which I specify here. So once it is done, then we are good to go with the generated ID. So whatever the record is generated, that will be in the generated ID. So that I get it with key holder. So it is a long, so I'm getting it as a long value. So with this JDBC client, you can execute any queries that we want, not only the insert query, select query, even you need not to write a two queries here. You can also write straight away. You can write a returning class that if you have a feature in that particular version. So for now, I just have two queries. I will write two queries to show you how it works. So find by ID, I'm passing this ID here. It's very simple. You can just straight away add this like this. Okay. So what you can observe here is still we are writing the query by ourselves, I guess JDBC. And you can see one thing, the code that you see here, the difference, there is a huge difference here. So you have managed connection previously, so which is not an issue anymore. And you prepare the statement by yourself, but still we are doing it in a SQL where we need to pass our query. And after passing the query, and we are just mapping the data to the person object, like whatever we give. So this is also done in there where we are getting the result set and doing it. So you can see the connection has been abstracted completely here. So also the piece of code, the code that we write is more readable, and as well as it's very small. So you can speed up your development if you are like to create it faster with the queries, and you can do it very fast. So it's very simple. So likely it has separate scenarios where you can use it for a more flexible queries. Yeah. So let us test it how it works. So before that, we are using it in Spring Boot, right? To make sure it's Spring Boot, we need to do we make sure that it is a service. So only then we will able to auto-wire it, and it will create a bean for it. Then what else? Test need to be Spring Boot test. Yeah. So regarding the data source, this should be, just leave this part. This is just to connect the database. So that will not bother anymore. So we don't want to don't want to do this. Let's remove this. Okay. So due to some glitch, some of the code which I written previously was gone. So I'm doing it again. So the auto-wire. So we can auto-wire, and we just annotate with the Spring Boot test. And now the Spring Boot application is ready. Okay, let's execute this. Okay, before executing it, I need to show what is the difference between JDBC and JDBC client. The dependency tree graph. So previously in JDBC, you can say I just added only one dependency where I use only JDBC driver. But when I use Spring JDBC, you can see little extra been added here. So we, along with the driver, we have a JDBC jar and a respective jar which is necessary for the JDBC support. So regarding the JPA, the data that you are asking, right? So we need not to have a support. Actually, when it comes to Spring data, we have so much of features inside. So when you have you need not to do any work with that feature, you don't want to go it. We can omit it. We can just go with JDBC because most of the things can be avoided. Let me come again with the JDBC data, JPA, and let us observe what is happening. Okay. So let me run this. Yeah. Yes. Actually, JDBC template, the next version of JDBC template is client. So this was much more improved. Actually, both are same. Like theoretically, both are the same, practically as well. But it is slightly the version which is improved, where you can like customize everything in the code itself. Yes. Yeah, I hope that will. Sorry, due to the glitch, a lot of the code I added has gone. So let's add this again, the Spring Boot application. So without this, Spring cannot start, right? Okay. So how much time this JDBC driver took to run this query? It's comparatively like 1 second. So now it takes 2 to 3 because we're using Spring Boot, where you need to follow the life cycle. So that you need to create the beans in the container and need to fetch it back and need to, so that's doing this process, you need to do all the process that have been present in the Spring Boot. Fine. So no issues with that. Whatever the problem is solved, we are able to save the person's data and we are able to retrieve it. Okay. So we used record as well. That helps. But what you see here is, can I use everything that Java provides for me? Yes, still it is yes. You can use anything, whatever the Java provides when it comes to JDBC client. What about the next question that we have? Can you use any framework for this? Can I use Quarkus for performing this JDBC client? No, because this JDBC client is only available for now. It is only available in Spring 6. If you want to use it, you need to add the dependency of the Spring, like Spring JDBC, to avail this feature. So this is tied up with the framework. But still, if you want to do without JDBC client, there is more much powerful thing that we can do. So now I have done a process where I abstracted the connections completely, but still I am writing the logic like query. So I'm writing the query, right? The insert query, the return query, and everything. And it's still I need to take care of these things very carefully because this can mess up my code. So what can I do? So this is still, yeah, this is good, but still I can improve a bit more. So there comes into the picture where JPA comes into the picture. So it's very easy for the transition of JDBC. We just add the dependency from JDBC to JPA. And for this as well, we need Spring Boot, but not exactly. You can also use Hibernate as an external dependency if you want as in code Java. But when it comes to JPA with a high end of high features, it's good to go with the starter data JPA. It will give you more flexibility in feature. Okay. So we have migrated our JDBC client to JPA, but not in code wise. Just we have downloaded the dependencies. Now let's go and check. Okay, what else can be done? It is obvious that we need a repository as a, like, if you are a Spring Boot developer, we all know that we would create a repository layer. We have a folder or repository, or we will follow it in different way. Repository, and let me add it as a person repository. It should be interface. Oops, I made this. It should extend. We have two things: JPA repository and CRUD repository. So CRUD would be the top of JPA. So let me use CRUD. I should mention which model that I'm going to use, and this need to be mandatorily annotated with repository. So only when we do this, the Spring will know that this particular the bean is belong to repository. Okay, fine. Now, only this is enough for this. Still, we can make more improvements here. Let's remove this JDBC code here. So it's very clear that it is making a huge impact with the JDBC client. So let me comment this code as well. So when it comes to JPA, our work is very simple yet. Just I'm removing the JDBC client and just replacing it with person repository, whatever I created there. Let me migrate it for better understanding. Okay. So still we can write find by ID because this particular, whenever you use this repository, it gives you huge features. You can see, you can use save, find by ID, basic queries like count, delete all, delete all by ID, find all. So these are the methods which was default in the JPA. They are providing by default. You can also write your customized query. You can also write native query and whatever. There are much more features that you can enable in JPA. So literally you can do anything with JPA. So not only there is no limitations for it, but still there are some limitations with Java. I will tell you what it is. Okay, let me, to reduce the another query, let me keep it as much as simple. So let's remove this. Yeah, the single line code is enough to save and retrieve the data. You all agree, right? So when it comes to JPA, you can save the data and you can retrieve the data. The problem is solved in a single line. But still, you can observe one thing. This particular person is used as a repositories class. This need to be marked as an entity to achieve what we are trying to do, because only then Spring Boot application, that particular bean would be created, so that the repository will do its job well. But there is another problem here. So when it comes to Hibernate, a record cannot support in this way. It can support in either another way. There we have a workaround where you can use Entity Manager to customize the records, and you can use it. Because records are immutable in nature, the fields that present in records are immutable in nature, which will not help us in updating the data, what we are trying to do. We need to create an entity object again from the crash. So still we have a workaround, but it's not a good way to have a record straightforward. So this particular limitations are there. So that let me migrate this to class. So that will be more flexible for us here. Okay. So not only that, this particular entity is the place where we directly mention our database. For example, if the database ID, primary key, as I told, in our database, we have only one ID and name, right? So ID will be the primary key. So let's have this as ID from the Jakarta persistence. And this need to be auto-generated. So let me have a generated value, which is strategy of generated identity. Yeah, we are good to go. Rest of the things we can omit. Now let me run this test and check what happens. Yeah, still it works. So it's very easy, right? When it comes to developer friendly thing, we like to write a small piece of code that solves our problem. Also, it is faster to write, and it speeds up our development. So that like in industry, most of us use this JPA to speed up the process of the development, also to get the desired feature by this. So what is the catch here? Still it is useful. I'm not just debating this JPA is not bad, but I need to write this model class, right? So I need to write this model class to achieve these things. So I need to write this entity class by myself as a developer. I need to write it. So what if I say, yeah, but still when you do with Lambok, during that compile time, it generates the code by itself internally. Yeah. Yeah, sure. But what if instead of writing the model itself, the code generates you a model? You get my point, right? Let's say if a table has 10 columns, so you will write this data, and you just keep this 10 column attributes, right? Private string and whatever it is. So what if I don't want to write that model itself? The code, the framework itself will generate the model based on the database column. So that will be ease our problem. Like it will also increase our development time, right? So there comes into the picture called the framework JUG. So this particular framework is not a competitor of JPA, but in other perspective, it helps us in some way to solve our problem in different way. To enable JUG, we need not to use Spring Boot. We can simply use it in our normal code Java itself. Just so that let me remove the Spring dependencies, and let me also remove the Spring parent, and also the relevant files. So what are the present in Spring Boot, AutoWare, and everything. Yeah. So let us catch this in the runtime. Even the model, this model that we created, right? Let us remove this as well. So all we have is this persistent puzzle test and persistent puzzle. Yeah, still we need to make some changes because we have modified the changes from Spring Boot to JUG. The first important thing regarding the JUG that we need to add its dependencies. So this particular dependency is enough as a basic to perform the JUG operation. And so JUG is a compile time ORM which will generate your code by crawling the database. It writes the Java code by crawling the database in compile time. So we need to specify the configuration for JUG in compile time. So for now, I just have done the configuration by for this and just added this here. So where I added the configuration for, this is basic configuration. Like this, you can do more things. You can explore in its official website where you can explore more about the configuration, how it works and all. For now, it's just connecting the database in the configuration. So where I need to connect the database and which table. For now, I precisely given the person table. So for the configuration, for the demo purpose. So also I'm just specifying the directory where it need to be generated. The model, DAO and everything, the related database related stuffs where it need to be generated. I can give the directory here. So all I want to do is just sync this. Let's remove the Spring code from here, which might cause an issue here. Just an import and okay. I think this would be fine. Okay. We can do one thing. Let me comment this as well. Presenting its paper. So as it is a compile time ORM, let's hit Maven clean package and let's wait for Juke to complete our process. So it scroll my database and it gives the generating me the code. Oops, this is the trouble. Fine. Everything's good. It scrolls the database and it's just generate the like what are the models and related table. Yeah. So that we can find it in target folder, not only target folder that we can specify in configuration. So in generated source, in persistence, so I have only one table in my database, not only one table. I just added a configuration to pick only person database. So here, Juke generate some Java files. You can see here. Maybe I can make. So Juke has generated some code. These are the some code that Juke has generated to make our work very easy. So where this internally manipulates the query with the methods that Juke already generated. Not only that, so based on the DSL concepts, it automatically writes and gives the feature available in the table. For example, if a table is related to another table, you will have a feature like joins. And if you have a like primary key and foreign key mapping or like another enum or any kind of things that can be achieved dynamically in compile time. So you can leverage the same in the code as well. All you need to do is all we need to do is we need to set up the DSL context. That is the root for this Juke to handle over these things. So let me create the context. So this particular context, we need to specify which data source being used and what database I'm using. So for the dialect. So I'm using Postgres. So let's have it as Postgres dialect. So with this context, we can create records. Like example, you can create records and you can insert, update, and do whatever the things that you want to do instead of creating an entity data. So that is very simple. Where you can pause it here or either way. So instead of person, we use it as person records in Juke. So the implementation will be very in another way. Okay, context. Let's have this context here. Okay. New record. So this record would be a person record of person. So these are the documentation that you can available. It is available on the Juke's website where you can read and perform more actions like this. So this person records where I can set name as JavaFest for now. So as I have only one attribute, another one is ID. I don't want to specify it. So regarding the save, I already commented the code, right? Let's uncomment it and make some changes over there. Let's remove this code as well. So instead of person in Juke, we use person record. Okay. So in the JPA itself, the queries are unused. So we can remove the queries. Even in JPA, we didn't use it. Okay. So we are getting the person, storing the person, and storing the person in database and returning the person. That's it. So it's quite easy. So it's not the comparison of JPA. It's a possibility that I'm showing that model can be auto-generated and that can be queried in this way. This particular problem can also be solved in this way, where you can allow the framework to create the model, DAO and everything by itself. And you should learn some juke by yourself, because you need to know when to use store. So without knowing this, when to use store, and without knowing this, how to use this DSL new record, it would quite be impossible to implement this. So you need to go and study the documentation of this. And this would be person record that we have created here. So whatever we created here, so that we will pass here. So that will be person record. Yep. So when it comes to juke, still it solves the problem by this way. So let me run this. Yeah, actually not exactly. So they differ. Actually, this person record is responsible for the entity that we write in JP. It's similar to the entity, but when it comes to person, it also has some other features as well, where we will specify the types and the properties of the person, what we are going to give them. And regarding this, to give a obvious solution, a clear solution, this is all about that we need to know about juke, that we need to dig into juke deeper. I need to know what it is and how it works and everything. I need to know the what are the methods that need to use to perform the action. So we need to have catch up with this particular framework to know all these things, why this is generated. So I'll come to this your question in another framework in an easier way. Yeah. So let's run this. Yeah, this case has passed. My entry is updated. JavaFest. It is updated in the database. Okay, how come you believe me? It is updated in database. Oops, don't have logs. Okay, let me add it here. Let me open this Docker with logs. So these are the logs that previously we have executed. This is the current log. It executed twice. So there is an insert query have been performed, right? So the JavaFest had been inserted to the DB. Fine. Okay, it's cool, right? Joke is cool. Fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We are doing the connection actually. I will show you that. So what you see here is the data source that we are passing to Juke to access the database is a connection, like we are using it. But the connection that we need to make, what we are making is like JDBC that we do basically, the connection interface, and we do it. That we don't want to do it here. But basically we need to somehow connect the database. When it comes to Spring Boot has a leverage internally. It will connect to the database based on the property file, and also it will create a bean accordingly. But when it comes to core Java perspective, where there is no framework support, we need to write the data source by ourselves to make sure that our Java is connecting to the correct URL, like URL string that we are giving. So still Juke and what are the framework that we are independently using still need data source to connect to the database and execute it. Yeah. So Spring Juke is cool. Yeah. You can use Juke with JPA as well, because all you need to do is just add a dependency and you can use it. But I don't know exactly how it helps with both, because JPA itself has so much of features inside. It's also already have so much of features. So actually we are trying to solve a problem. Still JPA can do it. Why we need Juke in this place? Yeah, this is a quite really good big question. But What happens is JPA need identity to treat it as a model, but Juke does not need identity. But when it comes to Juke has a separate formula and separate rules to basically tell this is my entity. So when it comes to JPA, there is no clear evidence that JPA will agree. Hey Juke, whatever you say as an entity, that I take it as entity. So that evidence is not there. So whatever JPA says, hey, this is my entity. So Juke is not in the place, hey, that is to say that is also my entity. So they have there's a separate track. So this is a scenario based where you need to decide based on the project, and you can use it wisely. So you can go with both, but you can implement it separately either ways. Cannot combine the implementation of both. You can use both JPA and Juke as well, but it should be in a separate path because they are not connected for now. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. With my research at Juke, for now, I don't have any clear answer for that. Still, it's going to be boilerplate code from my research. Like, what are the thing? Yeah. Yes. Yes. So, okay. Fine. Not yet. Maybe I will explore it later. Thanks. His question is like connecting two databases, like with the JPA and comparatively with Juke. No, no, you're asking about the JPA, right? Okay, okay. Yeah, let's see the another framework, same as Juke. Okay, so that is similar to Juke. Let me clean the Maven so that it will remove the everything in target folder. I don't know. So what the other framework that I'm going to tell you right now is, it's called SQL component. Okay, let me remove this build because that same SQL component will going to do the same thing. And luckily the other part, we don't want to add anything in the dependencies as well. So all we need to do two things to liberate the features available in SQL components in our project is to configure the build, because that is also a compile time ORM as Juke. So we just write a build config where we specify two things. One is plugin for that what are the SQL components that we are going to use, and the goal where it need to be generated, and the Postgres, like what are the database we are now going to use. Okay. So the other thing, one thing we need build, the other thing, the important one is the YAML file. This need to be present in your project root folder, where this for now I just change this as, yeah. So I change a little bit to support our current session. So here this configuration file need to be there to support this SQL components. When these two things are in our hand, this works same as Juke, but in a different way. So let me run this, but still we have this DSL context. Let's remove this code. Okay, let me remove this. Let me comment it first, then let's remove this. So before removing this, you can see some of the JUG dependencies, DSL context, dialect. So there are some implementation that JUG are provided here lately. So what we can do is, okay, let's remove all these dependencies. So let's generate it again. So this particular SQL components will do the same work what JUG does. Fine. Let me go to the target folder and go to the generator source person. Now you can see some code in JUG that which was not like clearly understandable when it comes to SQL components. It's quite different, where you can leverage the latest version of Java. So it supports from the Java 17 version, so not below that. And the records, you can see clearly there is only two attributes, which is ID and name, which is my column, what is present in the table. The question that you asked, right, that regarding the person. Okay, the two things. So it is also clearly documented. So if a database developer need to write any comments, he can right away write in the database cell. And whenever the code is generated, it also takes the comments with it. Okay, not only this, I can show you the store. So this completely handles the DAO layer. So data access, the DAO layer. So where you can query a lot of stuff here. So going back to the implementation, it's very simple. All we need is two things, store and data manager. So let me create a data manager. It's a straightforward thing. Yeah, that will be the last. Yeah, that will be the last. It's done actually. Change this as person itself. So we don't want to have person records anymore, and we do it in this way. So we get a person store. So this is what the DAO layer that we have. This we can get it from manager. And with this store, we can perform the queries straight away. You don't want to write a query, but you can perform it in a different manner. So where you can insert, delete, select, and everything. So insertion is very easy. Insert dot values. You can pass the entire object, and if you want to just execute it, or you can also return it. So you can need to pass another thing, very important thing, which is let keep it as final so that data source. So we need to pass the data source here. You can just straight away return it. That's it. So this is same as Juke, but with a different approach where you can see all the implementation that we do is completely native, like native Java's native feature. So no internal dependency, everything will be SQL. So whatever you can just go to the website and sqlcomponents.org and you can explore regarding this. So there are more features there, and you can see most of the features are in Java's native library, which is .sql, or it will leverage the power of JDBC internally, to obvious to say. So thanks for the opportunity, guys. Thank you. Thank you.